My name is Mason Carter. I'm 20 years old, and until a few weeks ago, I believed I lived an ordinary life. People often described me the same way. You're the kind of person who smiles with his eyes. I never knew whether to take that as a compliment or a warning. I was tall, quiet, and usually the one who listened instead of speaking. My friends said I looked younger than I actually was because of the softness in my face. My mother used to joke that no matter how old I became, I would always carry the same innocent expression I had as a child. She was probably right. I had plans. College classes. A part-time job at a bookstore in downtown Seattle. Weekend coffee runs. Long walks along the waterfront whenever life became too loud. Nothing extraordinary. Just a simple future that finally felt like it belonged to me. Then, in a single heartbeat, everything disappeared. Rain had been falling since early afternoon. Seattle wore its familiar gray coat as people hurried through crowded sidewalks beneath umbrellas. I had just finished my shift at the bookstore and decided to walk instead of waiting for the bus. The cold air felt refreshing. My headphones were playing an old acoustic playlist while I watched the lights reflect across the wet pavement. I never heard the tires, only the horn. A violent screech. Someone shouting. Then, darkness. No dramatic final thoughts. No memories flashing before my eyes. Only silence. When consciousness finally returned, the first thing I noticed wasn't pain. It was the smell. Antiseptic. Clean sheets. Medicine. The kind of scent that instantly tells you you're somewhere your body never wanted to be. My eyelids felt impossibly heavy. I opened them anyway. Everything around me was white. White ceiling. White curtains. White lights. For a moment I couldn't remember my own name. Then the pain arrived. A dull ache spread through my head while something sharp pulled at my left arm. And 4. My heartbeat echoed loudly inside my ears. I tried to move. Bad idea. Every muscle protested. Before panic could settle in, I heard a calm voice. Easy. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The voice carried a strange warmth that immediately slowed my breathing. You've been through a serious accident. I turned my head. Standing beside my hospital bed was a man wearing dark blue scrubs beneath a white coat. He looked to be around 40. Tall. Broad shoulders. Neatly combed dark hair touched with the first hints of silver near his temples. His eyes. They were unlike anything I had ever seen. Steel gray. Calm. Patient. The kind of eyes that had witnessed countless tragedies yet somehow still held kindness. His name badge caught the light. Dr. Adrian Hayes. He stepped closer without rushing. You've been unconscious for almost 18 hours. His voice remained steady. I'm Dr. Adrian Hayes. He offered a reassuring smile. I'll be overseeing your recovery. I wanted to answer. Instead, my throat burned with dryness. He seemed to notice immediately. Without saying another word, he poured a small cup of water and gently helped me sit up just enough to drink. His movements were careful, almost protective, as though I were made of fragile glass instead of broken bones. Take your time, he said softly. No one's rushing you. Those simple words settled somewhere deep inside me. It was strange. I'd known him for less than 2 minutes. Yet something about his presence made the frightening hospital room feel safer. The following hours blurred together. Nurses checked monitors. Machines beeped steadily. Pain medication drifted through my veins. Every now and then Dr. Hayes returned. Unlike the other doctors who seemed constantly in motion, he never looked hurried. Whenever he entered my room, the atmosphere changed. He listened. Actually listened. Not just to my symptoms. To me. What do you study? What kind of books do you like? Any siblings? Simple questions. Simple conversations. Yet somehow they made the endless hospital hours easier to survive. The next morning sunlight slipped through the blinds, painting soft golden lines across the room. I woke to the quiet sound of paper turning. Dr. Hayes sat near the window reading my medical chart. For a few seconds he didn't realize I was awake. Without the professional expression he usually wore, He looked tired, almost lonely, like someone carrying invisible weight. When he noticed my eyes open, the serious look disappeared. "There you are." His smile returned. "I was beginning to think you'd sleep through breakfast." "I might," I whispered. He laughed. A genuine laugh. Not loud. Just enough to brighten the room. "That's actually a good sign." As the days passed, our conversations became longer. He still examined my injuries with complete professionalism. Checked my pulse. Adjusted bandages. Reviewed scans. But somewhere between blood pressure readings and medication schedules, something shifted. He began asking about my dreams. I learned he rarely talked about himself. Whenever I asked questions, he answered politely before redirecting the conversation back toward me. It was subtle. Almost impossible to notice. Yet I noticed. One afternoon he looked directly into my eyes while checking my neurological responses. He paused. Longer than necessary. Then quietly said, "You have thoughtful eyes." I blinked. "What does that mean?" He smiled faintly. "What?" "My patient is giving me medical advice." I smiled. It seemed fair. For a moment we simply looked at each other. Neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. Felt peaceful. Until he quietly reached for my wrist. "I'm just checking your pulse." His fingers rested gently against my skin. Professional. Measured. Yet somehow, he didn't move away immediately. Something about the warmth of his hand made my heartbeat speed up. His expression changed almost imperceptibly. He noticed. Of course he noticed. Doctors always notice. He slowly released my wrist. "Your heart rate's elevated." "I know." Our eyes met. Neither of us explained why. That evening rain tapped softly against the hospital windows. Seattle disappeared beneath layers of mist. Dr. Hayes stood near the doorway after finishing my examination. He looked as though he wanted to say something. Instead, he simply smiled. "Get some rest, Mason." "You too." He nodded. Then left. The room suddenly felt colder. Much quieter. I stared at the closed door for several minutes before finally lying back against the pillow. Something was changing. I didn't understand it yet. Maybe neither did he. But deep inside, beneath the healing bruises and aching bones, a different part of me had already begun waking up. And neither of us knew that the accident bringing us together was only the beginning of a story that would test our hearts, our courage, and everything we believed about love. By the beginning of my second week at St. Matthew's Medical Center, most of my physical pain had become manageable. The bruises covering my ribs were fading from deep purple to pale yellow. The stitches above my eyebrow no longer throbbed every time I smiled, and with the help of physical therapy, I could finally walk short distances without feeling like the ground was moving beneath me. According to every scan, every chart, and every doctor on the floor, I was healing. But there was one problem no medical test could explain. Every morning, before opening my eyes, I found myself listening for the same footsteps. Dr. Adrian Hayes always walked with calm confidence. His footsteps were never rushed, never loud. Somehow, after only a week, I could recognize them before anyone else entered the room. It became part of my routine. Wake up. Listen. Wait. Smile when the door opened. I never admitted that to anyone, not even to myself. One rainy Tuesday morning, I waited. The door opened. It wasn't him. Instead, a young resident physician walked in carrying a tablet. "Good morning, Mason." He introduced himself, checked my vitals, reviewed my medications, and left less than 10 minutes later. Professional. Efficient. Forgettable. I assumed Dr. Hayes was simply busy. Hospitals never slowed down. Emergencies happened. Surgeries ran late. It wasn't unusual. Or at least, that was what I told myself. The next morning, he still didn't come. Another doctor handled my examination. Another polite conversation. Another forced smile. When visiting hours ended that evening, I caught one of the nurses adjusting my four. "Excuse me." She looked up. "Yes." She hesitated just long enough for me to notice. "He took a few personal days. Is everything all right?" She offered a careful smile. "I'm sure he'll be back soon." That answer should have reassured me. Instead, it made my chest feel strangely heavy. 3 days. 3 impossibly long days. The hospital hadn't changed. The same machines beeped. The same nurses smiled. The same meals tasted equally terrible. Yet everything felt different. Empty. I hated myself for caring so much. He was my doctor. Nothing more. Doctors had lives outside hospital walls. Families. Friends. Responsibilities. Why was I counting the hours until he returned? Why did every hallway seem quieter without him? I couldn't answer those questions. On the 4th afternoon, the familiar footsteps finally echoed outside my room. Before I even saw him, I knew. The door opened slowly. Dr. Adrian Hayes stepped inside. For one impossible second, relief washed over me so powerfully that I almost laughed. Then I looked at his face. Something was wrong. Very wrong. His shoulders were tense. The warmth I had grown used to was gone. His expression looked carefully controlled, like someone wearing a mask that didn't quite fit. "Good afternoon, Mason." His voice sounded calm. Too calm. Almost rehearsed. "You've been making good progress." I searched his face. "You were gone." Tiny pause. "I had personal matters to deal with." He opened my chart instead of looking at me. His eyes never stayed on mine for more than a second. It felt deliberate. Like he was avoiding something. Or someone. Me. The examination lasted only a few minutes. He checked my bandages. Listened to my breathing. Asked routine questions. Every movement was perfectly professional. Every sentence carefully measured. The kindness was still there, but the closeness had disappeared. When he reached for my wrist to check my pulse, his fingers touched my skin for only a brief moment before pulling away. No lingering warmth. No quiet smiles. No conversations about books. No gentle jokes. It shouldn't have mattered. Yet somehow, it hurt more than my healing ribs. As he prepared to leave, I couldn't stop myself. Did I do something wrong? He froze. His hand remained on the doorknob. Slowly, he turned around. "What?" "I feel like you're avoiding me." Silence. Long, painful silence. He looked exhausted. Not physically. Emotionally. As though he'd been fighting a battle no one else could see. Finally, he walked back into the room and quietly pulled a chair beside my bed. He sat down. Folded his hands together. Stared at the floor. When he finally spoke, his voice barely rose above a whisper. "I need to keep some distance." I frowned. "I don't understand." His jaw tightened. "Neither do I." The room suddenly felt much smaller. Outside, rain tapped softly against the window. Inside, neither of us moved. After what felt like forever, he finally looked at me. His gray eyes carried something I'd never seen before. Fear. Not fear of me. Fear of himself. "Mason." He took a slow breath. "I've spent my entire career believing I could separate my work from my emotions." Another pause. "I've always been able to." He looked away again. "But this time..." His voice broke. "I'm failing." My heartbeat quickened. I didn't speak. Couldn't. "I find myself worrying about you when I'm not here." He laughed quietly. It wasn't a happy laugh. "I wonder if you've eaten. I wonder if you're sleeping. I catch myself checking your chart even when I'm off duty." He closed his eyes briefly. "That's not supposed to happen." The words echoed inside me. I suddenly understood why he'd disappeared. He hadn't been avoiding the hospital. He'd been avoiding... I tried staying away, he admitted softly. I thought a few days would help. Did it? He smiled sadly. No. The honesty in that single word shattered something inside me. He wasn't pretending anymore. For the first time, he looked completely human. Not the confident doctor everyone admired. Not the man who always knew the right answer. Just someone struggling against feelings he never expected. I swallowed hard. You think caring about someone makes you weak? It's more complicated than that. Then explain it. He stood and walked toward the window. Seattle's skyline disappeared behind gray rain clouds. I've seen what happens when professional boundaries disappear. His voice became quieter. I promised myself I'd never let that happen. So you're pushing me away? I'm trying to protect both of us. From what? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he rested one hand against the glass. From consequences. I slowly climbed out of bed despite the lingering soreness. Every step hurt. But somehow, walking toward him felt necessary. When I reached his side, we stood shoulder to shoulder, looking out at the rain. I don't know what this is either, I admitted. But pretending nothing has changed won't make it disappear. He turned toward me. For the first time in days, our eyes truly met. There was no pretending anymore. No professional mask. Only truth. Raw. Terrifying. Beautiful. Mason. He whispered my name like it carried more weight than it should. I can't lose everything I've worked for. You won't. You don't know that. Then help me understand. His shoulders rose and fell with a deep breath. There are things from my past. He stopped. Shook his head. Things I can't tell you. Before I could ask another question, a sharp knock echoed through the room. The door opened. A hospital administrator stepped inside wearing a serious expression. Dr. Hayes. Adrian immediately straightened. Yes. We need you in administration. His expression darkened. Now? I'm afraid so. The administrator glanced briefly toward me before lowering his voice. It's about the old case. Every trace of color disappeared from Adrian's face. For the first time since meeting him, I saw genuine panic. Not anxiety. Not stress. Panic. He looked back at me, and in his eyes I saw an emotion far stronger than fear. Regret. As though he already knew whatever waited beyond that door had the power to destroy everything we had just begun to admit. Without another word, he followed the administrator into the hallway. The door closed behind them, leaving me alone, with more questions than answers, and the uneasy feeling that whatever haunted Adrian Hayes wasn't buried in the past after all. And somehow, it was about to change both of our lives forever. The door clicked shut behind Dr. Adrian Hayes. For several seconds, I remained exactly where I was, staring at the empty doorway. The room suddenly felt too quiet. The rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor seemed louder than before, and the rain tapping against the windows no longer sounded comforting. One sentence kept repeating inside my head. It's about the old case. What old case? Who was that administrator? And why had the color completely drained from Adrian's face? I had never seen him look frightened before, not even during medical emergencies. Whatever this was, it wasn't ordinary. That night, sleep refused to come. Every time I closed my eyes, I remembered the sadness in Adrian's voice. I tried staying away. I'm trying to protect both of us. Protect us from what? The questions chased each other in endless circles. Around 2 in the morning, I finally gave up trying to sleep and walked slowly toward the window. Seattle stretched beneath the night sky, its streets glowing with reflections from the rain-soaked pavement. Cars passed below like tiny streams of light. Somewhere beyond those streets, life continued as normal. People laughed. Families had dinner together. Couples walked hand in hand. While I stood inside a hospital room wondering why someone I had known for only a short time already mattered so much. I rested my forehead against the cool glass. When did this happen? I whispered to myself. No answer came. The following morning, Adrian arrived earlier than usual. He looked exhausted. His white coat was neatly pressed as always, but it couldn't hide the fatigue written across his face. There were dark circles beneath his gray eyes. His smile looked forced. He closed the door behind him before speaking. "How are you feeling today?" I studied him for a moment. "You first." A faint smile appeared. "You always answer a question with another question. Only when someone is avoiding the truth." The smile disappeared. He walked to the chair beside my bed and sat down heavily. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, he exhaled. "Mason, what happened yesterday?" He rubbed his hands together, as though searching for the right words. "I wish I could tell you everything." "Then tell me what you can." His eyes met mine. "There are parts of my life that never truly stayed in the past." He stood and slowly walked toward the window. Sunlight filtered through the clouds, casting soft light across the room. Without turning around, he began speaking. "About 6 years ago, I treated a young patient after a serious accident." His voice was calm. Too calm. "The recovery was difficult. The family was frightened. Emotions were high." He paused. "One day, someone accused me of becoming too emotionally involved with the patient's care." I frowned. "But you didn't." "No." His answer came immediately. "I didn't." He looked down at the floor. "But accusations don't always need proof to cause damage." He finally turned toward me. "The hospital opened an internal investigation. They questioned every decision I made. Every conversation. Every visit. My reputation," he swallowed, "was nearly destroyed." I could hear the pain hidden beneath every sentence. "The investigation eventually cleared me." "So you were innocent?" "I was." "Then why are you still afraid?" "Because people remember accusations much longer than they remember the truth." I understood then. Not completely, but enough. He wasn't afraid of his feelings alone. He was afraid of history repeating itself. "I transferred hospitals," he continued quietly. "I rebuilt my career. I promised myself I would never allow personal emotions to blur professional boundaries again." He looked directly at me. "And then I met you." The room fell silent. "I didn't plan this, Mason. I didn't want this. But every time I walked into your room," he shook his head, "it became harder to leave." I lowered my eyes for a moment. "I thought I imagined it." "You didn't." "I thought maybe I was confusing gratitude with something else." "So did I." We both laughed softly. Not because anything was funny, because sometimes laughter is the only way to survive uncomfortable truths. "I've never felt this way before," I admitted. "I don't even understand it." He stepped closer. "Neither do I." For the first time since our conversation had begun, there was no fear in his expression. Only honesty. Raw honesty. The kind that leaves no place to hide. "I think about whether you've eaten." He smiled faintly. "I worry if physical therapy hurts too much. I check your chart when I'm not even assigned to your floor." He laughed at himself. "Do you know how ridiculous that sounds?" I smiled. "It sounds human." Our eyes remained locked. The silence between us no longer felt awkward. It felt safe. Like neither of us needed to pretend anymore. Very slowly, he reached toward my hand, then stopped. Only inches away. His fingers trembled. "I shouldn't." "You don't have to." He looked relieved. "I don't want to make your recovery more complicated." "You don't." "I already have." I shook my head gently. "No." "You made it bearable." His breathing caught. I saw emotion flicker across his face before he quickly looked away. Just then, a firm knock interrupted us. The door opened. A man in a dark suit entered carrying a thick folder. His expression was serious, professional, almost cold. "Dr. Hayes." Adrian immediately straightened. "What is it?" The man glanced toward me before lowering his voice. The review board has reopened your previous investigation. My stomach tightened. What? Adrian's voice barely moved above a whisper. New evidence has been submitted. The man placed the folder on a nearby table. And there's something else. Adrian didn't answer. The silence itself became permission. The central witness mentioned in the updated report. He opened the folder. Has the same first name as your current patient. I felt my heartbeat stop. The man looked directly at me. Mason. My mouth went dry. What? Adrian turned toward me so quickly that the chair nearly tipped over. His face had gone completely pale. This has to be a mistake. The man nodded slowly. We hope it is. He opened another page. The witness from 6 years ago was named Mason Carter. I stared at him. My name is Mason Carter. I know. Every muscle in Adrian's body became rigid. For one terrifying moment, nobody spoke. Then I found my voice. My middle name is James. The witness's middle name? The man checked the file. Michael. He looked up again. Different middle names. He continued reading. Different hometown. Relief spread across Adrian's face so suddenly that it almost looked painful. So it's not him. The man nodded. No. He closed the folder. It appears to be a coincidence. I finally exhaled. I hadn't even realized I'd been holding my breath. The suited man gathered the documents. Even so, Dr. Hayes, the board still expects your statement tomorrow morning. They'll want clarification regarding your current patient as well. Adrian nodded once. I understand. Without another word, the man left. The room fell silent again. But this silence felt different. Heavier. Because although the misunderstanding had been cleared, the investigation had not. Adrian slowly sat down, burying his face in his hands. For the first time since I'd met him, he looked broken. Not like a doctor. Not like a man with all the answers. Just someone carrying years of guilt that had never truly belonged to him. I carefully reached over and rested my hand on his shoulder. You don't have to face this alone. He looked up at me. His gray eyes were glistening. You have no idea how badly I needed someone to say that. I smiled softly. Then let me be that someone. His expression changed. Not dramatically. Just enough. For the first time in days, hope returned to his eyes. Neither of us realized it then. But outside those hospital walls, people were already making decisions that would test not only Adrian's career, but the future we had only just begun to imagine. The morning of Adrian's hearing arrived beneath another blanket of gray Seattle skies. Rain traced slow paths down the windows of my hospital room, blurring the city beyond into soft shades of silver. Normally, mornings brought a quiet sense of hope. Nurses greeted patients with warm smiles, breakfast carts rolled through the hallways, and somewhere down the corridor someone always laughed loud enough to remind the rest of us that life continued, even inside a hospital. But that morning felt different. The air itself seemed heavier. Every passing minute tightened the knot in my chest. At 9 o'clock, Adrian stopped by my room before heading to the review board. He wasn't wearing his usual white coat. Instead, he wore a charcoal gray suit with a navy tie, making him look less like the doctor I had come to know and more like a man preparing to defend his entire life. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he smiled. It was small, tired, but genuine. You're up early, he said. I couldn't sleep. I figured. He slipped both hands into his pockets, almost as if he didn't trust himself to leave them at his sides. I wanted to see you before the meeting. I nodded. I'm glad you came. He pulled a chair closer to my bed. I don't know how long this will take, he admitted. The board may ask questions about the old investigation. And about me? His eyes softened. They probably will. I swallowed. Are you going to tell them the truth? He looked down for a long moment. Yes. The answer surprised me. You are. I won't lie. He raised his eyes to meet mine. But I'll also make one thing very clear. What? That I have never crossed a professional boundary. His voice remained steady. My feelings are my responsibility, Mason. My actions have always been ethical. I believed him without hesitation. There had never been anything inappropriate between us. Only conversations, shared silence, kindness, hope, and feelings neither of us had expected. I don't want your career destroyed because of me, I whispered. He leaned forward slightly. Listen to me. His voice carried the quiet confidence I had admired from the first day we met. You are not responsible for this. My past isn't your fault. My choices are mine. The words settled inside me like warm sunlight after days of rain. Sometimes the strongest people weren't the ones who never felt fear. Sometimes they were simply the ones who chose honesty despite it. Before leaving, Adrian stood beside my bed. For a brief second, it looked as though he wanted to hug me. Instead, he simply rested one hand lightly against the metal bedrail. I'll come back as soon as it's over. I'll be waiting. Our eyes met one last time. Then he walked out. The hours crawled by. Physical therapy came and went. Lunch arrived untouched. I couldn't focus on television or the book resting on my bedside table. Every sound in the hallway made me look toward the door. No Adrian. By late afternoon, anxiety had completely replaced patience. Finally, I asked one of the nurses if she knew anything. She hesitated before answering. The meeting is still going. Is that bad? She offered a sympathetic smile. Not necessarily. It wasn't very comforting. Nearly 6 hours after he had left, the door opened. Adrian stepped inside. The moment I saw his face, I stood. He looked emotionally drained, but something else was there too. Relief. He closed the door quietly behind him. Well? He laughed softly. I forgot you were the impatient one. So? The board accepted my statement. I let out the breath I'd been holding all day. They reviewed every document, every interview, every complaint, and they officially confirmed there was never any professional misconduct. A smile spread across my face before I could stop it. You did it. He shook his head. No. We did. For the first time in days, genuine peace settled between us. It felt as though a storm had finally passed. The peace, I would soon learn, never lasts forever. 2 days later, my discharge papers were ready. The doctor assigned to complete them wasn't Adrian. Hospital policy had quietly changed after the board meeting. To avoid even the appearance of favoritism, another physician signed my final paperwork. Neither Adrian nor I complained. We understood why. Still, it hurt. A little. Maybe more than a little. That afternoon, a nurse entered carrying a folder. Congratulations, Mason. You're officially going home. I smiled politely. Thank you. She handed me the documents. I'll give you a few minutes. After she left, I stared at the papers resting in my lap. Going home. Just days ago, it was all I'd wanted. Now, it felt like losing something I hadn't expected to find. A gentle knock sounded at the door. Adrian stepped inside. This time there was no chart in his hands. No stethoscope around his neck. Just him. For a moment, neither of us moved. So, he finally said, this is goodbye. I looked down at the discharge papers. Is it? He didn't answer immediately. The hospital has rules. I know. I won't be your physician anymore. I know. We probably shouldn't. I know. I interrupted him with a quiet smile. You've spent days telling me what we shouldn't do. He laughed despite himself. I guess I have. I walked toward him slowly. Every step felt strangely important. When I stopped in front of him, only a few feet separated us. I have one question. Okay. When I walk out of this hospital, I took a slow breath. Will I become just another former patient? His expression changed instantly. Pain flickered across his face. No. The answer came without hesitation. Never. My heart skipped. Then what am I? He searched my eyes. Someone who changed my life. His voice barely rose above a whisper. I spent years hiding behind work. I convinced myself that feeling less meant hurting less. He smiled sadly. You proved me wrong. I felt tears threaten to gather. You changed me too. I came here broken. I thought I was recovering from an accident. But somewhere along the way, I smiled softly. I found something worth healing for. Neither of us noticed how quiet the room had become. Outside, the rain had finally stopped. Sunlight broke through the clouds, filling the room with warm golden light. It felt almost symbolic, as though Seattle itself had decided to give us one clear afternoon. Adrian looked toward the window before speaking again. When enough time has passed, when you're no longer my patient, when everything is completely appropriate. He hesitated. I'd like to ask you something. I smiled. You don't have to wait. His eyebrows lifted. No. I already know. You do. I nodded. You want to ask if we could start over? He stared at me. This time his smile reached his eyes. Maybe. Not as doctor and patient, but as two people. Meeting for the first time. I laughed softly. I'd like that. Just then, another knock interrupted us. A nurse peeked inside. Sorry to interrupt. She smiled warmly. Mason, your ride is here. The moment had arrived. I picked up my small overnight bag. It suddenly felt much heavier than it really was. I walked toward the door. Halfway there, I stopped. Turned around. Adrian was still standing exactly where I'd left him, watching. Quietly. As though memorizing the moment, I smiled. If you ever need someone to remind you that you're stronger than your past. He looked up. Call me. His eyes shimmered. I will. I reached for the doorknob, then heard my name. Mason. I turned. He stood a little straighter. No hesitation. Only sincerity. You'll never have to wonder whether someone is hoping you're okay. He placed one hand over his heart. Because wherever life takes you, a part of mine will always be hoping the best for yours. I couldn't find words, so I simply smiled. Then I walked out of the room, out of St. Matthew's Medical Center, out into the cool Seattle afternoon, believing our story had reached its ending. I had no idea that the hardest chapter of our journey had yet to begin. 3 months passed. Seattle slowly exchanged its endless rain for the warm colors of early autumn. The maple trees lining the streets turned shades of gold and crimson, and the crisp morning air carried the promise of new beginnings. Life was supposed to feel normal again. My injuries had healed. I had returned to college. The bookstore welcomed me back with the familiar scent of old pages and fresh coffee. Customers smiled. Friends laughed. Classes became busy again. From the outside, everything looked exactly as it had before the accident. But inside, something was missing. Every street reminded me of the hospital. Every cup of coffee reminded me of our quiet conversations. Every rainy afternoon reminded me of the man with calm gray eyes who had taught me that healing wasn't only about broken bones. Sometimes it was about broken hearts. I kept my promise. I never tried to contact Adrian while I was still recovering. There were boundaries that deserved respect, and I knew he valued them. Still, there wasn't a single day when I didn't wonder how he was. Was he sleeping better? Had the review board finally left him alone? Did he still walk the hospital halls with the same quiet kindness? Or had our story become nothing more than a memory? Questions became part of my daily routine. Answers never came. One Saturday afternoon, I wandered into Elliott Bay Book Company, my favorite bookstore in Seattle. Whenever life became overwhelming, books had always felt like home. I spent nearly an hour browsing the fiction shelves before choosing a novel about second chances. As I turned toward the checkout counter, I stopped. Someone stood only a few feet away. Tall, dark hair, a navy sweater instead of a white coat. For one impossible second, neither of us moved. Then he smiled. The same smile. Warm. Gentle. The one I had replayed in my memories more times than I could count. "Hi, Mason." My heart forgot how to beat. "Adrian." He laughed quietly. "I was beginning to think I'd imagined you." I could say the same thing. For a moment, the busy bookstore disappeared around us. People walked past carrying novels and coffee cups, completely unaware that two lives had just collided again. "You look well," he said. "I finally feel well. I'm glad." His smile carried relief that words couldn't express. "And you?" He nodded. "The hospital kept me busy. The review board officially closed the investigation. No conditions. No restrictions. It's finally over." Hearing those words lifted a weight I hadn't realized I was still carrying. "I'm happy for you." "Thank you." An awkward silence followed. Not uncomfortable, just uncertain. Neither of us knew what came next. Finally, Adrian smiled. "I believe." He glanced at his watch. "You're no longer my patient." I couldn't help laughing. "No. I'm not." He took a slow breath. "Then I'd like to ask you something." I already knew. The answer had lived inside my heart for months. "Would you?" He hesitated for the first time since we'd met. "Have dinner with me? Not as a doctor. Not as someone responsible for your care." He smiled nervously. "Just as Adrian." I looked into his eyes. There was no fear anymore. Only hope. "I'd love to." That evening, we met at a small waterfront restaurant overlooking Puget Sound. The sunset painted the water with shades of orange and gold while sailboats drifted peacefully across the harbor. For the first time, we talked without hospital walls surrounding us. I learned Adrian loved classical music. He collected old fountain pens. He woke up before sunrise even on his days off because quiet mornings helped him think. He learned I wanted to become a writer someday, that I secretly filled notebooks with stories I never showed anyone, that I believed every person carried a novel inside them. "You should publish one," he said. I smiled. "Maybe someday. I'll be the first person to buy it." Hours passed unnoticed. The conversation flowed naturally. There was no pretending, no fear, no professional distance. Just two people discovering each other all over again. As we walked along the waterfront after dinner, a cool breeze carried the scent of the ocean. The city lights shimmered across the water. "I used to think my life ended 6 years ago," Adrian admitted quietly. "When that investigation happened, I lost trust. I stopped believing I deserved happiness." He looked at me. "Then you walked into my life." I smiled softly. "I literally crashed into it." He laughed. "You did. And somehow," his voice grew gentler, "you reminded me that the worst chapter of a story doesn't have to be the last." We stopped near the railing overlooking the bay. The city skyline glowed behind us. Neither of us spoke for several moments. Finally, I broke the silence. "Can I tell you something?" "Always." "The accident scared me. I thought I'd lost control of my future." I looked out across the water. "But now." I turned back toward him. "I don't wish it had never happened." His eyes widened slightly. "You don't?" I shook my head. "It hurt. It changed everything. But it also brought me to the person who helped me find myself." His eyes softened. "You give me too much credit." "No. I give you the truth." Adrian stepped a little closer, close enough for me to hear his steady breathing. "Mason." "Yes." "I've spent months asking myself one question." "What question?" "If life hadn't brought you into my hospital room." He smiled. "Would I have ever learned how to live again?" Emotion tightened my throat. I reached for his hand. This time, there were no hospital policies, no uncertainty, no fear of crossing a line. He gently intertwined his fingers with mine. The touch felt simple, natural, like coming home after being lost for a very long time. "I don't know what tomorrow will bring," Adrian said. "Neither do I. But I know one thing." "What's that?" "I don't want to face it without you." A smile spread across my face. "You won't." Months later, life continued to surprise us. There were challenges, busy schedules, long hospital shifts, college exams, days when exhaustion replaced romance. But we learned something important. Love wasn't built only in extraordinary moments. It lived in ordinary ones. Morning coffee, late-night phone calls, quiet walks through the park, holding hands without needing to say anything, healing each other one ordinary day at a time. Looking back now, people often ask me whether I regret that rainy afternoon when everything changed. My answer is always the same. No, because sometimes life breaks your plans, only to build a future far more beautiful than the one you imagined. My accident left a scar above my eyebrow. It will probably stay with me forever. But every time I see it in the mirror, I don't remember the pain. I remember the beginning. The day I opened my eyes inside a quiet hospital room and met a doctor who taught me that healing isn't only about medicine. Sometimes, healing begins the moment someone truly sees you, and sometimes, the greatest love stories don't begin with perfect timing. They begin with two wounded hearts choosing, day after day, to heal together.